Hello, Kal Kadosh. How are you? I wanted to share with you an interesting shiur about jail, which is called ma'asar. Ma'asar is putting someone in prison. Is it an onesh, which is a punishment, or a protection? So first, we'll just go very quickly through here, and then we'll continue. In the Torah, we did find that there's going to be different times of people being put into jail. Number one is the Megadef. Megadef is in the end. Yeah, Parashat Emor, when a person came and he cursed, right? We don't actually want to say that, but he blessed the name of Hashem, he cursed Hashem. And because if you remember, this was the son of Shalomit bat Ivri, the father was Egyptian, he violated the woman. And what happened was, it says over there in the Torah, they placed him in the Mishmar, lifrosh lahem, to know, right, al pi Hashem. The next one is going to be in Parashat Shelach, which is next week's Parashat, which is going to be Mikoshesh b'Shabbat. Somebody came and he started cutting wood on Shabbat, being Mechalel Shabbat. And there also, ve'anichu oto b'mishmar, as it says over here, they placed him in the Mishmar. Ki lo forash miyazelo, they didn't know what to do with him. Now, even though they both happened in the exact same time, it didn't say it together. We have to understand why. Okay? There is going to be a third time in this week's Parashat, in Parashat Behaalotecha, and this is when Eldad u'Medad, that we already mentioned in the past, Eldad and Medad, it's a machloket between the Oziel and the Dad Zekerim Balei Tosafot, whether they were Moshe Rabbeinu's brothers from the father or from the mother, which means when they got divorced, Amram and his wife, there was a whole question whether this was from the father or the mother. So Eldad and Medad, half brothers of Moshe Rabbeinu, they decided not to participate in the lottery. There was a lottery to have the Shemin Zekerim. There were 72 elders instead of 70. And in order not to make a vote, they withstood. They retracted their votes, which means that they weren't running. And the fact that they retracted their running and now there was not going to be any vote, they had the 70 elders. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu went and he said, the fact that you guys retracted your votes and you didn't want that kavod, that honor, I'm going to give you prophecy. So what happened? They started prophesying in the machaneh, in the camps. And what did they say? They said that Moshe Rabbeinu was going to pass away and Yoshua bin Nun was going to bring them into the land of Israel. So Yoshua bin Nun, the student, he comes and he says, Adoni Moshe, kilahem. He says, Rashi says, what does that mean? My master Moshe, kilahem, says, Tanum el beta kele, put them in jail. Why? Because this is what they're saying. So now, obviously, we know Yoshua was not answered, and they weren't put into the jail. Okay, however, though, the Megadef, the one that cursed, and the one that did Divi Mechalel Shabbat, they were put in Mishmar. Mishmar is Beta Asurim, as the Unclus says over there, which means jail. So now Rashi says that even though they both happened in the same time frame, but they put them separately, and they didn't put them in the same cell. Meaning that even though they were both put in jail at the same time, they weren't put in the same cell. Rashi brings out the reason why. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says the reasoning for both of them was different. By the Megadef, they didn't know, the one that cursed, they didn't know if he was supposed to be killed or not to be killed. But the Mikoshesh, which is the one that cut the wood on Shabbat, they knew they had to kill him, but they didn't know which death penalty. And from here, we're going to go down to a few different things about learning how you're supposed to act for jail. So let's just go quickly through here, okay, which is the introduction, a summary. It says here, which means in these cases, we know for sure that there was an avirat done. And now we have to find out, is it permitted to put the one that's suspected, even if it's not for sure that the avirat was done to him, and the ma'asar is needed just to start interrogating them, or right when they have testimony on the avirat, even though the witnesses were not interrogated, right, we're not questioning. That's going to be the first question. Another thing we have to understand is, can we learn from the jail in the Torah that which we're supposed to do nowadays to permit, right, letting go for example, for example, somebody already has to go to jail, but now they want to bail. So what are they going to do? They're going to give money, and that money is big enough that they're not going to run away. So therefore, does this from inside the Torah, could we actually bring a proof to that or not? Number 4, Dalet. In Divrei Chazal, it says, Ma'asar ad yom hamitah. What does it mean, Ma'asar ad yom hamitah? For example, somebody that received lashes, and they repeated it. So Bedin put them into the kippah. What does it mean, the kippah? They put him into like the jail. They give him barley to eat until his stomach explodes. Now the Gemara says, so we have to understand when do we use this type of form, which is basically it is jail, but we're actually just killing them. It's not that we're doing the death penalty, but in other words, that's what we're doing. Hey, number 5, or is it hagana mipshia, which means, is the purpose of jail a punishment, or is the purpose of jail making sure that they're not going to do it again, or they're not going to come and do something bad, negative again? Vav number 6, is it permitted to come and to start putting someone in jail because they didn't pay a debt, right? Or they don't pay taxes. Okay. Number 7, another thing that we found in Rishonim is which means can we put somebody in jail in order to enforce a judgment? So then we have to understand when is it permitted, not permitted. Are you allowed to put somebody in jail on Shabbat? Because maybe then you're trapping a human being, right? And then this is what we're going to be going through throughout the entire shiur. So on page 1, I have it here. If you want to make it a little bit bigger. Okay. We're going to start. So it comes out the son of, this is an Isha Israelite, a woman that she's an Israelite. Vehu, and he was Ben Ish Mitzri, the son of a Mitzri. So I told you all, it was the Egyptian father and the Jewish mother. The only case throughout the entire Mitzrayim that this happened, that the man came, she thought it was a husband. And what happened was he comes into Ben Israel and he starts fighting. Right? He cursed the name of Hashem. Like Kalel, they brought him to Moshe. The mother's name was Shlomi, but and so they placed him in Mishmar, Lifrosh Lahem, to find out. So what does it say over here? Levado, by himself, says Rashi. They didn't place him Mekoshesh with him. They didn't put the one that cut the wood with him. They were both at the same time. But they knew that the Mekoshesh was supposed to be killed. Because it says, if you desecrate Shabbat, you get killed. But they didn't know which type of death penalty they was going to get. Right? So therefore it's written, Lo Kurash Maya Atelo, wasn't explaining what to do with it. But the Mekalel, it says Lifrosh Lahem, to explain to them what was supposed to be done with it, because they didn't know if Bichal was going to be Chayav Mitar or not. By the Mekoshesh team it says, right? But Yuban Isav and Nibar, they were in the desert. This is in Parashat Shalach, next week's Parashat. By Mekoshesh team Yom Shabbat, they found the person cutting wood on Shabbat. They brought him close to Moshe and Aaron. To everybody, they placed him in the jail, but they didn't know what to do with him. Now in this week's Parashat, it says Hashem comes down to the cloud, Parashat Behaalotecha, chapter 11, and he starts speaking the Ruach. There's the Shivim Zekenim, right? And there were 2 people that stayed in the camps. One of them was Eldad, the next one was Midad. And I already told you they were the brothers of Moshe Rabbeinu, half brothers, right? And they had a Ruach, which is Ruach HaKodesh. And all of a sudden it says here, they started giving the test, they started giving prophecy in the camps. So the Na'ar, which we know that this Na'ar is obviously Yoshua bin Nun, he runs to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says, look what they're prophesying. Yoshua bin Nun comes and he says, right, Vayoman Moshe, he says, Adoni Moshe Klaem, put them in jail. Rashi says, Atil lem tzorchet tzibur, give them tzorchet tzibur. If you start giving them work of the community, communal work makes them get finished off on their own. Community service, and that makes them finished off on their own. That's all you have to do. Give them a community service job. Don't worry about them. Right? Davar acher, another explanation. Tenam el bet hakele. Put them in jail. Why? Lefi shayu mitznaveim Moshe met Yoshua machnis et Yisrael la'aretz, because he was coming, right? And he was saying, they were saying that Moshe Rabbeinu was going to pass away, and Yoshua bin Nun was going to come and bring them in. Okay, so now here, there's going to be a few things. Okay, there's also going to be by obviously Yosef, that they put him in jail. We're going to see exactly what does this mean. But beforehand, from these three different cases, and we're going to bring down certain halachot which are brought down. Halakha number 1 is going to be brought down in the Minchat Asher. The Minchat Asher is over here, where the Minchat Asher is going to come this Rav Asher Weiss, right? He comes and he says the following. The Sha'al Ledati al Sha'amar lo Harav, right? Shekol onash ha'ma'asar minhago yuimu, v'lo matzinu b'halacha reshut la'atzor adam. That which he said, there was a rabbi that came and he said, jail comes from the goyim, and there's no halacha, right, that comes and gives you permission to come and put somebody in jail. He says, since it's not nogya l'maaseh, then you yamenu, right? He says like this: B'Torat Hashem, we did find 2 different places jail, right? He comes and he says, right? What does it mean, the jail? Mekoshesh etzim, right? As we already mentioned, and Ben Isha Yisraeli, so the one that cut wood on Shabbat, and the one that cursed the name of Hashem. So now he says like this: what's the common denominator in these 2 halachot? We're not talking about a punishment. It's rather a protection of the one that transgressed the sin, until we find out when and what type of punishment it is. Right? Because it says here, the Mekoshesh, they knew he was Chayam Mitah, but they didn't know which one. And Megadef, they didn't even know he was Chayam Mitah or not. So Lamanu Mizeh, we learn from here, listen to these words. Lamanu Mizeh, de'en le'aniach b'ma'asar echad. You're not allowed to put in the same jail cell. Nisha avar avirah chamura, somebody that did a very grave sin, u'nisha avar al-kala, and somebody that did a very light sin. So halakha number 1 that we learn from here, Minchat Asher, says, jail cells, you cannot share a jail cell. Somebody that did a capital crime or somebody that did something very, very bad to somebody that did something very, very light. That's halakha number 1. Halakha number 2, Harav Lipa Kaminar, over here, of Lipa Kaminar. He comes and he says, Mikan Nuchal Lilmod, over here where the hand is, it says over here, Mikan Nuchal Lilmod, from here we can learn, She'en otzrim mimkom echad shnei atzirim, כאשר עונשו של אחד ידוע, ואילו זה של חברו עדיין לא נקבע. Rav Asher Weiss learned from the same 2 common denominators. He learned you could not put someone that did a grave sin and a lesser sin, right? Like, let's say, white crimes or lesser sin, right? Together. You cannot put them together. Okay? However, though, right now we're teaching another halakha. What's the other halakha which is being taught? You cannot put 2 people in the same jail cell when you know what the verdict of one of them is, which means you know the punishment, you know what's happening, and the other one, you don't even know what's going on with it. So you cannot put them together. That's halakha number 2 that we learned from these 2 common denominators. Halakha number 3 is over here, where it's going to be Alter Chanoch Leibowitz. Alter Chanoch Leibowitz, right? He comes and he says in his Sefer Chidushei Halev. This is actually the Rosh Yeshiva of Chavetz Chaim in New York. Okay? So he comes and he says like this, Mikan lamanu chidush gadol. From here we're going to learn a chidush gadol. What is the gadol? Kama yesh lizeir, how much you have to be careful. I'm over here, none. Velidog shelo letzair et hasheni, not to cause somebody to suffer. Why? He says, Sharei mekalel haya rasha gamur. The megadef, which is the mekalel, the one that cursed, was a rasha gamur. Right? But still, uvechol zot, I'm only reading the underlines. Uvechol zot, but still, roim anu shedagu lishmor v'shutav al matzav rucho. We wanted to make sure to protect his spiritual, let's say his spirit or his mental state and the way that he is, emotional state. And they didn't put him together with the Mekoshesh Etzim, Hakol Shema Yitzvah L'Shav, because if not, he would suffer for no reason. So you see from here, look at the 3 different halachot learning from the same common denominator. Rav Asher is coming and learning, you cannot put somebody that did a grave sin or somebody with a light sin. The next one, Rabbi coming and learning that you cannot put two people together. If one of them you already know the verdict and the punishment, and one of them you don't. The third one is that look how much the Torah was protecting the person, the emotional state, that we didn't want to put two people together, because if we didn't know what was the din yet, we wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to start thinking, why did they put me together with him? Because I'm also going to get death penalty just like this guy. He didn't want to do that. And even though he was a Rasha Kabur, he cursed Hashem. Still, we didn't want to do that. That's the importance of showing, right, what it is. Now we're going to speak about the concept of vada'ut, which means that for sure they did the averah. Okay, and now we're going to speak about what about somebody that's suspected of an averah, which means there's obviously a difference between somebody that you know committed the crime or somebody that you suspect, right? We want to come and put him on trial. Did he do the crime or not? There's a big difference whether you know the guy committed the crime or not, in a sense. So here, right, it says we want to bring a Gemara, right, from the Masechet Sanhedrin. The Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin, the Pain Chet Amud Bet, says like this: B'Rabbanan, the rabbis, Hai v'nakeh hamakeh. When it says v'nakeh hamakeh, my darshike, what are they making a drasha? What do they expound on these words? Nikah hamakeh, the one that hits is going to be exempt. Melamed, so it comes to teach you. Shechovshin oto. What does it mean chovshin oto? It says Rashi momdin lemita. If they're going to come and they're going to tell him that he has to get death, chovshin et hamakeh shel yivrach. They come and they put him in jail in order that he shouldn't run away. Whether to see if he's going to die or not. Therefore, it says nikah hamakeh mashma v'shikom v'nikah sheyakum v'nikah nikah dad hashta chamishud. Until here, he was going to be in jail. So you see from here that we're doing it shelo yivrach. What does it mean shelo yivrach? Right? So therefore, says the Minchat Asher, I'm not going to go down to page 6 again, but there in the Minchat Asher, Rav Shavai says, here's the Mekor Mefurash, a source Mefurash in the Gemara. You're allowed to put somebody in jail in order that he shouldn't run away. Right? You're allowed to put him in jail. Gemara Mefurash. Why? Here it's written, right? That he was put in jail so he doesn't run away. However, though, this Gemara in Sanhedrin, there's a proof only in a place where there's no doubt that he did the action. But what happens if there's only a suspicion? Because here, it was only if that until he gets the punishment, or until to see if he's going to die or not. But we still don't know about a case where he's only suspected. So then there's going to be another proof. Yerushalmi. Okay, this is Perek, Masechet Sanhedrin Perek Shim, right? And Israfin, there's Yerushalmi, right? This is it says like this, Yerushalmi in Sanhedrin says, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Kolcha, says Rabbi Yoshua ben Kolcha. Yeah, he comes and he says like this. Bechol yom danim oto et ha'edim bekinui. 1 second. Here it is. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Kolcha, says Rabbi Yoshua ben Kolcha, and every single day they're going to judge the witnesses. Bekinui yakeh yoseh yoseh. What does that mean exactly? V'zeh l'shuno. And he comes and he says like this. Ela kinui Kine ploni haraget nefesh vare edav sharaget nefesh. See, I'm here. Kine ploni haraget nefesh vare edav sharaget nefesh. Right. So they're trying to find out did he actually kill or not. Yet afusa chuvo edav. He should be grabbed until the witnesses come. The Pnei Moshe, which is here the explanation on the Yerushalmi. This is the Yerushalmi. So the Pnei Moshe comes and he explains. Anu shomeim. Yeah, right here on the bottom underline. We are learning from Matziti, from our Mishnah, if you have witnesses that somebody killed somebody, even though they didn't come and interrogate the witnesses, they grab him until they find out. Which means that from here you see, right, that what? That any time that there's witnesses, even though they didn't come and they didn't interrogate, and maybe there's not true women, right? So the Minchat Asher actually says, and the Rav Kaminash they bring down the same halacha would apply to avirot of mamon. Mamon means even of money cases. However, though it said that they said ploni gazal, but in the Ran it's ploni gadaf. Gadaf is that he cursed. So there's no proof from mamon. However, though, right, they do say that even if there's going to be witnesses, they would come and they would put him in jail, right? There's no problem. So therefore, if you're going to come and you're going to make a sikum, which is basically going to be a summary of what we just mentioned until now, yeah, he comes and he explains, this is Rav Kaminan on page 8. He comes and he says like this. Yeah, this is a sikum. נוכל לסכם את הדברים לומר, Kaminan, he comes and says we have a sikum. אפשר לעצור נאשם לצורך חקירה. You could come and you could take somebody that's suspected of whichever type of a criminal, of a crime. You could put him in order to interrogate him. You could put him in jail. Bet number 2. המעצר יכול שיהיה בגין עבירות שעונשן ידוע, והם בגין עבירות שלא ברור, מה יהיה עונש. אף לאחר שיוגש, שהנאשם ביצע את המעשים מיוחסים לו. You could put the person in jail, whether it's something which is known what is the punishment, or even if it's not known what the punishment is. We don't know what the punishment is, but you're allowed to put them in jail. Number 3, until you find out what to do with it. Number 3, you can only put them in jail only when there's something tangible to put them in jail. For example, witnesses or things like that, even though the witnesses were not interrogated yet, but not just for no reason whatsoever. For example, I hear a rumor, some guy went and you wrote the rumor's nothing. You need something tangible in order to come and do that. Right? Even nowadays by law, so they do the same thing. Until they get a warrant and everything, there has to be something tangible, by something there in order to do that. So from here we say, you can never stop somebody at the beginning of interrogations or because of some complaint, right? Or somebody snitched or things like that. At the beginning, the police have to come and check the suspicion and to actually prove that there is some basis of Navira Danim, and there's some types of witnesses or something there. Afterwards, then they could come and they could put him in jail in order to interrogate, in order to check it. That there's no permission whatsoever to come and to destroy the guy, right? In order to come and that he should, like to convince him that he's going to admit to what he's done if he's only going to be suspected. So that's just going to be the the summary of Rav Kaminan. Now we're going to speak about bail. Does bail exist according to the Torah or not? Okay. So to do with bail, right? Since this is before psak din, which means this is before the verdict has been given, right? So therefore, we can actually learn, right, that according to Ledat Betadin, right, maybe you could be permitted. However, though, Rav Asher Weiss and Rav Kaminan, they both brought down that we just said before, right? And they say something like this, right? They come and they say as follows. המחילתא. The Mechilta says, "V'nika makeh, yachol yiten arevim v'yitayel bashuk." Maybe you could give a guarantee and they could start walking around in the marketplace. Tamulomani yakum mitalef bachutz, magid shechoshin oto ad shemitrapeh, which means arevut does not help over here, and therefore the one that's guilty cannot start going and walking around in the marketplace. So it comes out that according to the halacha, giving a bond and letting them out does not help. Mitzad halacha. Okay, together with this could maybe be only with the Rotzeach, which a Rotzeach is a murderer. But maybe Dinei Mamonot, maybe it could. Right? Why? Because then why do you need a special pasuk by the Rotzeach? So the Minchat Asher says, V'efshar od, only if he hit somebody and the guy didn't die yet. Because maybe it could be that there's also going to be that he's going to be punished for killing somebody, for murder. But if they still didn't do any chakirah, the entire purpose is that he shouldn't run away, it could be that everything depends upon the Badi, and therefore will be permitted to come and to accept in order to let him free. So therefore, obviously depends on circumstances, but usually if it's for sure that the guy is going to get some, guilty, whatever it is, usually they will not let out on bail. But now we have to find out, okay, fine. So what exactly is the jail then? Is it punishment or is it going to be protection? So there's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin. We're going back to page 2, where the Mishnah in Sanhedrin says, Mishalaka v'shana. Somebody that comes and that they did an avirah and they repeated it, which means they got lashes, but then they did the exact same avirah again. So what are you going to do? You're going to give them lashes again? He made a joke out of you. So what do? The team put them into jail. Okay, which we're going to see what is the kippah here exactly. Here it says, Makom kishyut komat adam yoter. It's the height of a human being. That's all that it is. Mamash is low, not a big, nice room. No. Mamash like that. And then what do? They give him to eat seorim, barley, until the stomach explodes. Okay? So therefore, what does that mean? Here Rashi says, right, they're going to give him lechem tsar, bread, umayim, right, lachatz, and water until the bnei me'av, the intestines are going to become smaller, and then they give him barley, which makes it grow, and then what happens is that all of a sudden it's just going to explode. So the Namash, they cause him to die. Okay, so now the question that we have to ask ourselves is that when was it said exactly? Right? When exactly is it said? This is only going to be talking about averot, which are chamurot umyuchadot. So therefore, when can we actually use then ma'asar as an onesh? When do we use it as a punishment exactly? Okay, so it could be that there's actually a machloket to poskim this. Okay, why? There's going to be a Bet Yosef and Darkei Moshe. Remember, the Bet Yosef is the Shulchan Aruch, and this is the Darkei Moshe. Okay, so the Darkei Moshe, right? They bring down Rav Shrida Gaon. Rav Shrida Gaon comes, Shelat le Rav Shrida Gaon. Mi shavar avera, right? Right? He says somebody that didn't have a Shabbat or before, Shabbat, right? He's going to run away until Motzei Shabbat. Are you allowed to put him in jail until Motzei Shabbat and then give him lashes? Or to give him lashes on Shabbat? And he says you don't give him lashes on Shabbat, you can't put him in jail on Shabbat or Yom Tov and Kol Sheken on Shabbat. Okay, that's what the Rav Shrida Gaon comes and that he says. So now the Shvut Yaakov comes and he asks, the Shvut Yaakov is over here. He comes and he asks, 1 second. He says it's mashma that they put the Mikoshesh on Shabbat in jail. So then how did they do that? So there's a Kaf HaChaim actually. The Kaf HaChaim is over here on the side. The Kaf HaChaim says, V'im ken na'asa b'Shabbat. It says, Sharei motzim oto b'Koshesh b'Shabbat. V'im yom Shabbat lo barach. V'ay gam achar Shabbat lo yibrach. Ela v'day Shabbat. So ve'efshar kivan shu al chilul Shabbat shari. V'od she'yeh lemigdal minta. So here the Kaf HaChaim answers that the Mikoshesh Atzim was put in Shabbat. Right? He was put in jail on Shabbat. And why was he put in jail on Shabbat? 2 reasons. Number 1, because he was mechalel Shabbat. Meaning, if a person is mechalel Shabbat, so because he's mechalel Shabbat, you could put him in jail on Shabbat. It's like midah keneged midah. By the way, the same halacha applies to Shabbat. Do you know that on Shabbat, the fire of Gehinnom does not work on a human being, right? Which means that fire of Gehinnom on Shabbat does not work on a human being. That's only if you're saying it's Shomer Shabbat. If somebody's, and it only starts on Motzei Shabbat, that's why Motzei Shabbat we should try to say a beat as late as possible. But on Shabbat, if a person was mechalel Shabbat, the fire of Gehinnom still burns for him. Because since he wasn't Shomer Shabbat, so the Shabbat doesn't protect him. So therefore, this is one of the interesting, this is like the same idea. That the Kaf HaChaim is answering that they put him in jail on Shabbat because he was mechalel Shabbat. Another answer, says the Kaf HaChaim, was because it was the Migdal Milta. The Migdal Milta means is that like he made it as a geder. Geder is like he made it as a fence, right? He made it as a fence. So therefore, right, once they make it as a fence, so therefore that's it was going to be permitted. So that's what the Kaf HaChaim answers. Okay? Now he continues over here, and the machloket exactly is right that there's 2 reasons. And this is what Rav Kaminad comes and he explains. Again, Rav Kaminad is over here. Rav Lipa Kaminad, he comes and he explains, and he says that there's going to be 2 different reasons, right? Why exactly, right? There's a machloket. What's a machloket? There's 2 reasons. Shelo yivrach, that he shouldn't run away, and number 2, onesh is the punishment. So now on Shabbat and Yom Tov, we don't give punishments, right? Right? So then you can't stop him. But if it's that he shouldn't run away, so then he could run away. So you have to be careful. So therefore, he comes and he says that's the 2 differences, right, between the 2. Okay, that means basically it all depends what's the reason. So if it's going to be right, that means if it said shouldn't run away, so that you could stop him. So you would be able to come and he doesn't run away. But if it's going to be because of right that he shouldn't, punishment, you can't punish on Shabbat. Okay, fine. What about now for money reasons? Money reasons means because until now we were always talking about right money reasons. What does it mean? Like life and death. Somebody killed, cursed Hashem, things which are mechalel Shabbat. So that makes sense. What about money? Okay, so to do with money, this is also going to be a Gemara Masechet Pesachim. So on page 2, right? Masechet Pesachim, it says over here like this. Yeah, it says, Bet Bait Asurim Shel Israel. Bet Asurim Shel Israel. Rashi says, what does that mean here? Bet Asurim Shel Israel. So Rashi says, right? What does that mean? So Rashi says, even to pay money. So you come out from here, that it comes out, right? That we're actually going to come. And what is Asrina? Asrina and Bet Asurim. Bet Asurim is usually jail. Right? We Matir Asurim. You permit somebody, or Chavush be Bet Asurim. Asurim is a person that's a seed. He's tied up. He's in jail. So there's a machloket at full scheme. Are you allowed to come and put somebody because of paying money? Rashi says you could. However, though the Rashba and Tshuva says you cannot put somebody into jail because he didn't pay back a debt, right? Even if he's got money and he doesn't want to pay it back. Meaning not only if he doesn't have money, even if he has money and he doesn't want to pay back, you cannot put him in jail. That's also Pashtut of the Rambam. The Rambam says, right? En osrim b'chtei ligrom me'achzir chovot, right? But the Rosh says only if somebody that does not have money, then you don't put him in jail. But if he has the money, you could put him in jail. Right? So Lalacha, Shulchan Aruch is posek. On page 4, I'm going to bring you the Shulchan Aruch, the Shutarosh, the Rambam, Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch is posek, right? Lalacha posek Shulchan Aruch, she'en le'esor b'shel mamon. Maran says, ואין יכול לא לעשות לשתות בבוב. אפילו יצרה על עצמו שיתפוס המלווה בגופו, right? וכתב זה בשתיים המועים, ואין יכול לאוסרו. You cannot put him in jail. Says the Rama, שדווקא שאין לו לשלם, only if he has no money to pay back. אבל אם יש לו, but if he has money to pay back, he doesn't want to pay back, bedin חולשין אותו, bedin could come, and they could put him in jail, right? And he says, ומכין אותו, they hit him, עד שתצא נפשו, and we force him to pay. יש אומרים, and then some people say, that אפילו אם אין לו לשלם, עד נשבע, if he's going to swear, להיות חבוש של שלם, צריך לקבל תשובתו, then he has to actually come, and he has to be put in jail. So you see from here, the halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, right, of how it is, okay? So now, what about the concept nowadays of a certain amount of time? Okay, so now the Rambam, right? The Rambam comes, it says over here, right? The Rambam and also Shulchan Aruch says that koach bedin have the strength. Kol bedin afilu anam smuchi beretzel emulim she'am tutzi ba'averot tanim be'mitam emro men kol dinei v'afilu, right? He says over here v'afilu. Right, on anything. They could come and they could start doing these different things. Okay, so now, what does that mean? Whether we're talking about, right, ben b'mita or ben b'mamon, whether it's ben b'mamon, here's whether it's talking about death things, or life and death, or even money. And therefore, they have the rights to do that. Okay, so therefore, he comes and he says, right, if you look on, again, this is Rav Kaminat, he comes and he says, over here, Ma'asar mizman katzub and Ma'asar b'toch onesh. So he comes and he says like this: Kol ha'ma'asarim, everything that we just mentioned until now, they're from the Torah. Okay, and now we say that the samchut of the Chachamim and the Betin to come in order to be ligdor milta. So they have the rights to come and to make fences, and that was the nagu b'kilot b'chol adorchon zmanim. So now he says ba'apala taz shel samchut zu, the Chachamim that need to be very, very careful, as the Rambam finishes off by saying. Everything is according to what the Dayan sees. That whatever is fitting, and that's what we need. But everything has to be Yishim Shamayim. But it shouldn't be very light in your eyes. Right? Remember that the Kavod B'Yod pushes off on Asev Shiddehem. And therefore, a person has to be very, very careful about time frame. Because you're not going to start leaving a guy to rot there in jail for I don't know what. Right? And that's why it says over here also. Right, that when we're talking about now, right, it's not a revenge, right? That means basically we don't want to take a revenge against the guy, but rather we want the guy should be very careful and to understand what's going on. So that's why we're coming and we're actually mentioning, right, all these halachot, because again, obviously we do have a purpose that, for example, in order to make sure that people are going to fulfill the words of Betin, or they're going to do all these things, 100%, but it has to be according to the halakha, okay? And also, even because of Tzivui Beti. So this is in the Sefer of Mishpatecha Yaakov. Mishpatecha Yaakov, it says here, can you put somebody in jail because they didn't do the command of Beti? So after mentioning again, is it takana lidrot or not, all those things, he comes and he says as follows. He comes and he says, is the Gemara in Sanhedrin is talking about the penalty, right, as a punishment. But he says, but if it's not coming as a punishment, but it's rather just to listen to the words of Betin, so then that comes from Koach Betin to force somebody to do it, that they should come in front of them. So therefore, they're going to do that nowadays. That if a person doesn't have what to pay, for example, so therefore what? You're putting him in jail for what? The guy has no money to pay. What are you going to do? You're putting him in jail for what? Punishment. So he says, so that's not that he should listen to the deen, right? Or he has a mitzvah. He doesn't have money. What do you want from him? So for such a scenario, everything depends upon the bedin. So these are just the different halachot, because obviously it's going to give us a different perspective about what is a Torah's perspective about putting somebody in jail. Is it a punishment? Is it that you shouldn't run away? Protection, to listen, to do all these different things. So all these halachot apply to what we just mentioned until now.